everyone, it's Jess from the Corvallis Environmental Center, and I am here today to do a classroom food adventure with you. So some of you may have done classroom food adventures before in your actual school classroom, and some of you this might be a completely new concept, and that's alright. I will get you caught up on what those are. Obviously we are not in school right now, but that does not mean that we cannot make really yummy food and have fun with our harvest of the month. So with a classroom food adventure, they're always centered around a harvest of the month. And for April, our harvest of the month is, I'm going to give you a couple of clues before I actually tell you. So it comes from an insect. This insect is honeybees, is what it comes from. It is sweet and sticky, and it is the only food produced by an insect that humans actually eat. So take a moment just to think about what it might be, and I'm sure you already know. And our harvest of the month is honey. So right here I have a jar of local honey that was made right here in Corvallis. So that is our harvest of the month, is honey. Before we get started with our cooking demonstration, I'm going to give you a few facts about honey so that you have a better understanding of what it is, how it's made. So like I said, it is made from honeybees, and honeybees make this honey in their hive, and we eat honey, but they also use honey as a food source. So honey can vary depending on what type of flower that it is made from. So this honey is basically just a regular honey color, but honey can be really, really light in color or really dark depending on what type of flower that the bees are collecting the nectar from. And it can taste different depending on what flower it is too. So my parents make honey in Utah, and their honey that they make there tastes completely different than the honey that I bought here in Corvallis, just because it's different flowers. And a bee has to visit approximately 2 million flowers to make 1 pound of honey. So obviously that's going to be more than one bee visiting all of those flowers, but bees have to visit 2 million flowers to make 1 pound of honey. This jar is about 1 pound of honey, so this has the nectar from 2 million flowers in it. I thought that was super crazy. Then a bee will make about 1.5 teaspoons of honey in its lifetime. So right here, so I have our measuring spoons here today, and this right here is 1 teaspoon. So one of these plus a half of it is as much honey as one bee makes in its entire lifetime. Alright, so let's get started with now that we've learned a little bit about honey, let's get started with our cooking adventure today. And so we are going to make some honey cinnamon apples. I was telling my friend about that I was doing this video and that I had to think of a recipe for honey, and she was like, I've got the best recipe for you. And she makes this with her family, and it's really yummy. So honey cinnamon apples. So what we have for our ingredients is, obviously we have our honey. We also have some cinnamon and apples, and then we are going to use some butter. You can also use coconut oil, olive oil, vegetable oil, whatever kind of like light oil that you have on hand would be perfect. Right, there's no like right oil to use here, whatever you just have in your house. So very simple ingredients that you probably already have on hand. And so you'll need, those are our ingredients. The tools that we need are going to be the measuring spoons, and then also a frying pan or skillet to cook it in. Alright, so with every classroom food adventure, our number one thing that we always need to make sure that we do before we cook is wash our hands. So I have already washed my hands before I started filming this, so I am good to go. So before you start cooking, please make sure that you wash your hands with soap and water. And also when we do our classroom food adventures, right, it's an adventure, and so we need to keep that in mind as we're doing this, that we want to be adventurous with our eating. And so even if you're like, I'm not sure if I'm gonna like this, just keep an open mind, be willing to try it, and be brave with our food today. Alright, so once you've washed your hands, once you've gathered all of your ingredients, and then I think that we are ready to go. So I have already cut up my apples. So I did 2 apples, right? And I diced them up into like bite-sized pieces, right? Just diced them just like that. Not slices, but they're all diced up and I have them right here in a bowl. I'm going to be using 1 tablespoon of butter, or again, any oil that you want to use. And then we'll measure out our honey and our cinnamon when we get to that point. All right, everyone, I'm back here on my stove. I have my pan on the stove, my skillet. I have my heat set at medium, and then my butter is in the pan just melting a little bit. And then once that's melted and warm, then I can go ahead and dump in my apples. One thing I forgot to mention that we do need is a spoon to stir all of this together. All right, so my butter is melted, so I'm going to go ahead and add in my apples. Get all my apples in there. And then now that my apples are in there, I'm going to go ahead and add my honey and my cinnamon. So I'm going to set my spoon down. So I need 1 tablespoon of honey. So do you remember when we said that 1 honeybee will make 1.5 teaspoons of honey? So there are 3 teaspoons of honey in 1 tablespoon. So that means that this amount of honey right here was made by 2 bees. I'm going to go ahead and add this. There's my honey. And then I need 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. So here I'm measuring my cinnamon out. There's 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. So the cool thing about recipes is that you get to adjust them for what you like. So if you don't like cinnamon, you don't have to add the cinnamon, or you could add more or less cinnamon than what you want. And then we'll give this a stir. Here in just a minute, I'll show you what it looks like. I don't think that you can probably see in my pan right now, but I'll show you what it looks like, and then we'll stir this with the heat on for about 5 to 7 minutes, or until the apples are nice and soft. Right? We don't want them mushy, because then they'll turn completely into applesauce. You could still eat it and it would still be delicious if it did, but if you want the apples to hold their shape but be soft, then we need to cook them for about 5 to 7 minutes. Alright, so right now I can see that our honey and cinnamon have combined together, and that everything in there is getting warm. It's starting to smell like apple pie. It smells so good. Alright everyone, my apples are done cooking. So they are soft, but they still have a little bit of a crunch to it, which is what I was looking for. So you can go ahead and keep cooking your apples as long as you want. If you want it to turn into applesauce, you could do that. But I want mine with a little bit of crunch, but still some softness as well. So I'm going to go ahead and take mine off of the stove. Make sure to turn your burner off, and then I'm going to go ahead and remove this. Alright, so now it's the fun part, where we get to taste our recipe. Remember that with Classroom Food Adventures, right? I know we're not in the classroom, but you might still be making this with someone in your family and sharing it with them. So what we need to remember is not to yuck each other's yum. So if you don't like it, that's okay. If your family member likes it, that's awesome too. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're being respectful. So if you taste it and you don't like it, you could just say, no thank you, that's not my favorite, or that's not my jam. And if you like it, you can say, oh, that's so awesome, I really like that. So we want to make sure that we're not going to yuck each other's yum, right? So I am going to go ahead and spoon in some of my apples. I'm just going to do a little taste right here. Just put a few apples in there, especially if I'm not sure I like it, and then I don't have to like waste a bunch of the apples, right? If I don't like it and someone else does, that means that there's more for them. Okay, so remember with Classroom Food Adventure that we were trying to be adventurous. So if you're hesitant at all, just try to be brave and maybe give it a little lick so that you get the honey and cinnamon. All right, so I'm going to get some on my fork. I'm going to try it. I think that that is so yummy. And I hope that you do too. I'm going to have to tell my friend that I really, really like her recipe. And I should let you know that mine had cooled a little bit before I tried that. So make sure that you are letting it cool down before you actually taste it, so that it's not super hot on your tongue. All right, so I really loved this recipe, these honey cinnamon apples. I'm going to give it a thumbs up, and I'm going to save these, and I'm going to actually put them in my applesauce tomorrow morning for breakfast because I think that that sounds really delicious. All right, so there is going to be instructions and the recipe on how to make our honey cinnamon apples on our website that you can pull up so that you know how to make it. And also there will be a pollinator game, right? We talked about how honey bees are the ones that make honey, so they're considered a pollinator because as they make honey, they're pollinating all these different flowers. So there will be a little game for you to help identify different pollinators that you might see outside your house. So check that out as well. And have a great day. Thanks for joining me.